Deadly, cunning, merciless. Time Warner presents Predators of the Wild. 6 collectible volumes of compelling wildlife action. From the ocean's deep to the plains of the Serengeti, the vicious struggle for survival is unending, and the difference between hunter and hunted could depend on the size of an appetite at any given time. Restless sharks, savage lions, killer whales. Get an uncensored and unflinching view of the stunning tactics that make them nature's most efficient hunters. Wild dogs, giant grizzlies, exotic cats. Time Warner presents Predators of the Wild, a revealing look at how nature's true hunters teach their young to survive in an untamed wilderness. Beautifully photographed in some of the world's most exotic locales, Predators is a breathtaking look at nature's savage beasts. Collect all 6 volumes, including the ocean's most terrifying predator, shark. Get up close and personal with these razor-toothed killers and see how they track the scent of fear and why their primal urge to hunt is never satisfied. In Lion, you'll watch a lioness teach her cubs the rules of survival. Witness the grace and beauty of the ultimate tacticians in Cheetah and Leopard. Grizzly profiles a majestic beast who fears no animal, no man, and many more titles from an exciting collection of video cassettes, each featuring an in-depth look at nature's wild, how they create life, and how they take it away. Capture Time Warner's Predators of the Wild, environmentally packaged and collectively priced volumes of pure adrenaline-packed excitement. A rare and memorable collection your whole family will enjoy again and again. Available from Warner Home Video.
The grizzly is the largest and most feared predator in Alaska. It can kill people, and has. Yet many people choose to visit and even live in grizzly country. Once, nearly all of North America was grizzly country. Now most of the surviving bears live far from human habitation, among the wide valleys and mountains of Alaska and Canada. Many Alaskans live in grizzly country, and in the summer thousands go there to visit the bears. When they do so, they enter the realm of a large and powerful predator. During the caribou rut in autumn, the bears demonstrate their cunning and power. They watch the caribou from a distance, waiting for the old or sick to show signs of weakness. They won't risk attacking healthy, well-armed adults or young, protected by the herd. There are other prime predators here too. Wolves also have their eyes on the herds. They watch for mature bulls exhausted by the stress of continual combat or weakened from wounds. This old bull managed to escape the attentions of the wolves, only to fall prey to a grizzly. The caribou is not going to die without a fight. The bear seizes the bull's horns to avoid being gored. The grizzly's great strength and relentless attack is no match for a caribou. The bear's year starts in April, when the snow begins to retreat up the mountains. Mother and cubs, and lone males too, crawl drowsily from the dens where they have spent the winter, far from the haunts of humanity. The first necessity is food. All that's available is roots and dried grass from the mountainside in front of the cave which served as their den. Hungry old males have been known to kill and eat cubs. The females are much smaller and are unable to defend their offspring should a large male attack, so they try to keep them well out of the way. Spring comes late and slow at these latitudes. All over Alaska, the bears are emerging. 2 or sometimes 3 cubs are born in the den during winter. These are a few months old and completely dependent on their mother for milk. As the snow retreats, overwintered berries become available, as do ground squirrels, an important source of meat. With her powerful forepaws, she can dig deep into the squirrel's burrow system. The cubs stay close to their mother for food and safety. They have plenty of time to play and explore their wide new world. It's still too early in the year for them to see their first people. In remote wilderness areas, their only real enemy would be another bear. Females do not mate when they have young at foot, so it's an advantage for the males to kill the cubs. The female will then come back into season sooner and increase his chances of fathering offspring. The cubs will stay with their mother until they're more than 2 years old. She leads them through her domain, showing them where to find food. A bear is an excellent mother and often shares her food, but one too many interruptions can make her irritable. At 4 months, the cubs are on a mixed diet of milk and solids. They won't be fully weaned for another year or more. There are over 30,000 grizzly bears in Alaska and less than 1,000 in the rest of the United States. This makes Alaska a favorite destination for trophy hunters, to whom a large predator is still something to be prized. This man has traveled 3,000 miles at considerable expense to fulfill a lifetime's ambition. He's come to Admiralty Island, where, with the proper permits, it's legal to kill a bear.
Oh, that's great, George.
Thank you.
Yeah, with a lot of fiddling around for that, we did it. That's good.
Nice.
Yeah, that looks good. See, a little rub here, eh? Some of the guard here is gone. Looks like you started.
Probably in the den.
Yep, den rub, I'd say. Good shape.
Ever since Alaska became a state in 1959, all bears shot legally for sport have been tagged and their particulars recorded, including the name of the hunter. When the bear is a rug on the hunter's floor, he will be able to relive these moments.
Size as he was coming across the stream was something to behold. The first thing that strikes you as the bear first enters your visual field is the awesome size of the animal. Very, very beautiful, majestic. And as it strolled across the meadow, we just had to watch it for a few seconds before we thought about actually taking the animal. It's a personal question as to whether one really feels like he would be a hunter or not, one that you have to search your own soul and find. I think it primarily has to do with the experience of the hunt and with the challenge of the hunt itself.
But not everyone responds to that challenge. Stan Price lived among grizzly bears on another part of Admiralty Island for most of his long life. He came to know them as neighbors, if not exactly as friends. He never found them particularly aggressive, provided he treated them with respect.
Actually, I think they're much overrated as being such a vicious animal. I can't see that we've had any on Admiralty Island that has been attacked by the brown bears and killed.
Stan Price walked among the bears unscathed for most of this century. He had a philosophical view of hunting. He saw the licensed hunters come and go and was amused at the awe with which they hold his seemingly harmless neighbors.
You can imagine the disposition man has in a bear. He's afraid of him. And when he gets a bear in the side of that gun there, he's shaking.
At Denali National Park in Alaska, the ultimate emblem of the American wilderness is just a train ride from Anchorage.
Denali Park? Denali?
People come here in hope of a first-hand experience with wild grizzly bears. After Yellowstone, it's the second most visited national park in the United States, and all because of the bears.
This is a food container that we require people to carry their food in. Roughly half the backcountry zones in the park require the use of the bear-resistant container. Hope the weather stays with you, and good luck. Have a great trip out there. Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Most of the visitors to Denali are content to ride along the park roads in one of a fleet of buses. But for some of the travelers, sitting in a bus isn't enough. Randy and Allison Yates have come here all the way from the plains of Ohio, and they want to get out into the open country, among the grizzlies. They didn't know it, but they were walking into an adventure which would transform their ideas about bears. For people and bears alike, the spring in Alaska is a glorious time of year. There's a wide variety of things to eat to restore the mother bear's body weight after her long winter fast and to tempt the cubs' growing appetites. Among the other animals of the park, ground squirrels are especially important to the bear. They are a regular source of fresh meat for the adults. As a primary consumer, a plant eater, the ground squirrel is a natural prey animal. Here, the grizzly is its principal predator. Doll sheep breed freely in the park, but they are too agile to fall prey to bears. A grizzly can charge at well over 30 miles per hour, but the sheep can sprint away at 50 miles per hour. Grizzlies will take newborn lambs, but by the time they are a few days old, they're almost as nimble as the adults. Moose calves are not as agile. The moose is the largest herbivore in Alaska. They produce their calves in spring to take advantage of the flush of new growth. The calves are naive and rather clumsy at this early age. They wander away from their mother, exploring the new green vegetation. A few bears have learned to patrol the thickets in early spring, looking for moose calves. In some years, predation by these skilled bears can kill most of the season's young. A bear picks up their scent. Their mother is too far away to defend them. A pair of moose calves will provide food for a couple of days. After her first meal, the mother bear will cover up the carcasses and doze nearby until she's hungry again. Instinct draws the mother moose back to look for her calves, but she's too late. The moose's loss becomes the cub's good fortune. A well-fed mother will produce plenty of milk. A bear at a kill is at its most dangerous. People who disturb the hidden food store are liable to be attacked. So the park staff take every possible precaution to avoid accidents. The most popular and probably the safest way to see bears is by bus. One of the bus drivers is Jeff Brown, who has an unusual background for someone who spends his time taking people to see bears. In 1986, he and his companion were severely mauled by a grizzly in Glacier National Park in Montana.
I can just remember at that point being very close to a very large animal. It was, I think for a while we were face to face, and for some reason it was not biting my head. But I can remember it had awful breath. At that point the bear was dragging me off the trail and pulling me by my elbows and his mouth, also pulling me with front paws, and just sort of, I had a lot of raking wounds on my legs where I was being pulled that way. And all of a sudden something would just clamp onto my shoulder, and it felt like a big dog or something just wanted to get away from you. And I can remember the growling and all those noises right near my head and feeling like, get away.
Jeff walked 3/4 of a mile to get help. He and his friend were in hospital for a month. After 5 operations and 1,000 stitches, Jeff's body healed well. The shock took longer to overcome.
It took a little while to get used to hiking around the hills up here. And initially, I spent a lot of time studying the willows, looking for bears, and I've overcome that. And now I hike out here quite a bit. I go out in the park with groups, and I'm cautious, but I'm not unduly afraid of hiking here.
Denali is not the only park where people can get close to bears. Every summer, thousands of visitors fly into Katmai National Park when the salmon are running. Every arriving plane load is met on the beach.
Welcome to Katmai. What we have here is kind of a unique situation because you're right amongst a lot of bears. And what we try to do is give you a little bit of a beach speech so you know what to do when you do encounter a bear and how to not get a bad encounter, okay? There are 2 kinds of encounters you can have here, either surprise or food related. We try to avoid both of those kinds, okay? Surprise, all that means is when you're walking down a trail or walking anywhere around here, make a lot of noise. Do a lot of talking, clap your hands. They say don't whistle, okay? That's because you start sounding like a bird. A lot of people whistle a little bit too good, and then the bears aren't forewarned. So make a lot of noise. Clap your hands, say hey bear, when you go around a corner. Hey bear. Hey bear. Hey bear. Hey bear.
With grizzlies around, survival can depend on obeying the rules. In summer, the bears catch more salmon than they can eat. There are plenty of fish for them all. Not 20 yards away, the bears have an appreciative audience.
That instinct keeps them catching.
Mothers divide their time between feasting and keeping an eye on their young. Although relations between the bears are more friendly here than on dry land, old males, scarred from numerous fights, are unpredictable and not to be trusted. For the visitors, some of whom have traveled thousands of miles to be here, Brooks Falls is a wonderful spectacle. But the other reason for coming to Katmai National Park puts people right in the river with the bears. Brooks Camp must be the easiest place in the world to catch a big salmon for both man and beast.
Where'd Dad go? What? Where'd he go? You want to see him later.
Most of the fishermen use hooks without barbs so that they can release the fish more easily. They're only allowed to take one a day. Purists might argue that it's not very sporting, but there is an added challenge: the bears. They're everywhere. They can take as many fish as they like, and they have the right of way at all times. The fishermen are carefully briefed, like the bear watchers. They are to move slowly away from a bear, taking their fish with them. If a bear learns that people fishing means a free meal, it will lead to conflict. The bears look harmless, but a mother only has to feel her cubs are threatened to become deadly. It only takes one careless move to trigger an attack. So far, there have been no serious incidents at Brooks, though maintaining this record depends on the calm behavior of the individual fishermen and how well they remember their instructions. Walking slowly in these circumstances can take almost superhuman control. But if you do run, the bear is very likely to give chase. Tom Phelps had a close encounter one evening.
I was fishing, coming downstream, and a young male passed me on the right. And so I dismissed him as a problem, continued fishing, and I spotted a sow downstream from me with 3 cubs. And then she did a very unusual thing. She started running upstream, leaving her cubs behind. And so I thought, well, she wouldn't normally do that, so that other bear must still be in the area. And he was over there in that center part on the right-hand side of the stream, where I was going to climb out to avoid the sow. So I walked back up along the shore till I could see what actually was happening, and sure enough, the male stuck his head out of the bushes. So I left my rod and walked slowly upstream, across the stream, to avoid both bears. As soon as the 2 bears left the area, then I just went ahead and went back down there and went fishing again. The all clear was sounded.
Popular tradition would lead one to expect something much more dramatic from such an encounter. But experience at Brooks shows that if people act calmly and sensibly, there need be no real danger. At McNeil River, which is a state wildlife sanctuary and not a national park, the salmon run attracts the biggest concentration of grizzlies in the world. Thousands of gulls congregate round the bears, squabbling over scraps and leftovers. On most state land, hunting is allowed, but at McNeil River, the bears are protected. To kill one here would cause a public outcry. Grizzlies are never truly sociable, but during the salmon run they tolerate each other's presence for the sake of the feast. The youngsters, large and small, spar and wrestle with their brothers and sisters, but fights between adults are very uncommon. McNeil River may not offer hunting, but it does offer close encounters with bears. Small parties of photographers are taken to the riverbank to get closer than they will ever be again to North America's largest and fiercest predator.
Where's the other bear?
Over there.
How much are they just seeing it, you know?
It says laying down, so I'm looking for
Even the biggest old males pass peaceably, close to a riveted audience.
Is that one of the young ones just behind us above it a little bit?
I think so.
Oh, I think they're just
Tracy, the bear's going down to the water.
Oh, there she's moving. The one on top of the cup. The cup is following her.
Female salmon laden with eggs are a particular delicacy. Females with cubs are suspicious of strangers, even if they bring cubs. Their cubs are always vulnerable to attack, and they're not prepared to take any chances. Relations between bears and other bears are based on fear. People's feelings about bears swing from sentimental affection for the cubs to horror at what they grow into. But after 17 years of trouble-free association between bears and people, the McNeil River experiment has shown that fear and horror are misplaced, and respect is more appropriate. Hunters have been known to leave this place vowing never to kill another bear. Such a change in public attitudes may be the grizzly's only hope of long-term survival. It's vital to maintain high safety standards. One fatality would set the cause back. Randy and Allison Yates came back from their walk in the wilderness sooner than they expected, having abandoned their tent after a very close encounter, one which changed their view of bears.
On the way up the Alaska Marine Highway and everything, every magazine shop you stop in, like on the boats and everything, there are always these portrayals of bears, you know, with their teeth showing, and they're all, you know, standing on their hind feet and ready to attack anything in the area. And you go into the airport. We stopped in the airport in Juneau, and they have a big stuffed bear there, with, you know, standing up with its teeth showing and everything. And last night we were talking with the guy who lives in the cabin that we ended up camping outside of, and he was telling us that a bear's mouth won't even actually do that, that only a taxidermist can make a bear's mouth show its teeth like that. Last night when the bear came around the corner, she just looked over through the valley and didn't really even acknowledge that we were in the area. And the two cubs were just playing off separately at first, and then when they came together, they just played, and she rolled around their back and let the one nurse, and then and then just followed them into the bush, but there was no aggressive charge or anything like that, or any of the things that you would normally think a bear would do. We didn't really see any of that.
As we did hike up the hill, because I was so ready to get out of the area, I really didn't take a lot of notice, but what I did see was not a bear that was in any way really interested in us, but really the bear was pretty peaceful where it was.
Their briefing at the ranger station had had the right effect. Instead of running, they stood their ground and then made a quiet retreat. And another potential disaster became a memorable experience. Alaska sees many such encounters every year, and each one confirms the bear's new reputation. As awesome, yes, but not horrific. The name grizzly refers to the grayish or grizzled tinge to the bear's coat as it grows older, even though some like to think there's a darker meaning. As summer dies into fall, the bears begin to feed more urgently, harvesting berries to build up their fat reserves for winter. It's uncomfortable in the warm sunshine to be carrying so much fat, but unless they can increase their body weight by about a quarter from the day they emerge to the time when they return to the den, the bears will be hard-pressed to survive the winter. Both mother and cubs show the results as their figures become more rounded and portly. There are still ground squirrels to be found by an enthusiastic digger. The people who actually live and work among the bears have slightly different attitudes from the visitors and rangers in the national park. Bruce Burnell is a gold miner whose claim is in an enclave within the park boundary. He can tolerate living in grizzly country, but when two bears started invading his house to raid the refrigerator, he and his partner needed to break them of the habit.
Dan fired his .30-30 over the head of these two bears that showed up. They came back for second helpings, and they just stood there. They didn't run off, and the gun jammed when he tried to load another one in, and so he went back in the cabin, got his .44, and I was coming up with mine, and we had to shoot one of the bears. The other one ran off, and it's just the way it goes. It was sort of unfortunate, but once bears start eating your food, they know your cabin, they know the area, they're going to come back.
People are even less tolerant of bears when they have small children. When a bear visited Rory Hamill and her daughter Rena, they called in a park ranger to see what could be done.
I was just kind of peeking out.
There was a bear right there.
Yeah, we heard a noise, and it just was like a, you know.
There was the bear.
What was he doing?
In the pool.
This is kind of like where he got in there and chewed it all up. And we were inside kind of peeking.
Chewing on it, and he ate some of it.
You know, when I was peeking out, I noticed that he had a collar on, so I knew we were dealing with a problem bear to some extent. But we figured he was maybe 2.5, 3 years old. That's
almost how old I am.
That's right, almost how old you are.
He's just 3 right now.
If the children seem to take visits from grizzlies more or less in their stride, the adults feel differently.
Bears are serious. They're not cute and cuddly. They might look so from a distance, but they have big claws and big appetites. And they're the top of the food chain. They have no respect for anything but a bigger bear. I mean, on any given day, you could be hamburger to them. It doesn't happen real often, but every year in this state, someone's mauled, someone's killed. And like I say, it's survival, and I'm not going to be one of those who gets mauled or killed.
Most gold mining settlements have a standard procedure for encouraging bears to go away. The park authorities want to be called in at the first sign of trouble, in the hope that things won't reach the stage where the bear has to be killed. First, they use a lightweight cartridge, like a plastic bullet. Sometimes the bang is enough to drive the bear away, but this one was reluctant to leave such an interesting place, so the rangers tried again.
I lost the bear. How can I lose that? Oh, I'm in the wrong field.
A direct hit should have done the trick, but this bear turned out to be more stubborn than most, so park biologists were called in to move him away. They darted him with an anesthetic and called up the helicopter.
Can I get one more?
There we go.
I bet.
You guys now see, on the way back to that Singapore van yet?
Bears which have repeatedly caused trouble to the small communities in the parks are marked with a collar so that they can be recognized again. The helicopter will carry the offender to a distant part of the park in the hope that he'll decide to settle there. But bears are territorial animals. If he returns, and he persists in causing trouble, the authorities will airlift him to a more remote area. It's autumn, and the moose are rutting. It's the one time when their massive antlers are anything but a hindrance to the bulls. A big bull guards his harem against all potential intruders. Predation by bears in spring helps to keep the moose population steady. Disease, injury, and old age also take their toll. A moose carcass represents a feast for a bear, and a particularly welcome one at this time of year. By October, the first signs of winter are clearly visible on Mount McKinley, which towers over Denali National Park. The time is rapidly coming when there will be no more food for the bears, so they will have to retire for the winter. They don't hibernate in the true sense of the word. Their metabolism stays at a comparatively high level. That's why they need such a store of fat if they are to survive. The spring cubs are well grown now, though they both still sport part of the white collar of babyhood. They've learned a lot in their first season, but not enough to make it on their own yet. Eventually, the young male will wander away to find a place of his own. The female will probably stay within her mother's territory, but she'll suckle them both through the winter and through most of their second year, too. She'll continue to defend them, too. Just occasionally, wolves have been known to kill bear cubs. At least within Alaska's national parks, grizzlies have nothing to fear from mankind. The people who visit the park, or who live within its boundaries, regard bears in a very different way to hunters who shoot them in other parts of the state. But attitudes are slowly changing. People are learning that in grizzly country, there is no need to walk in fear. Grizzlies are not the ruthless killers of popular imagination. The last of the berries are becoming harder to find, and the time has come to take shelter from the Alaskan winter. Moose and caribou can find forage under the snow until the weather becomes too fierce. Then they will move into the shelter of wooded gullies, where moss and lichens will be their main food. On secluded mountainsides all over the state, the grizzly bears are returning to their dens, the males and pregnant females alone, and the mothers with their cubs. Mature bears often reuse their old dens year after year, but young adolescents on their own for the first time have to find a suitable hillside and then start digging. Fleming, the famous naturalist, wrote in 1958, "It would be fitting, I think, if among the last man-made tracks on Earth would be found the huge footprints of the great brown bear. In Alaska, as attitudes continue to change, it is more likely that this will be true. Even in grizzly country, people and bears can live together."